It's Ding Legend versus Magnus Carlsen. Already in this tournament, Ding has beaten Magnus, and this is the second game. And we have the Dutch defense with e6 setup, not the g6 one. Let's have a look. And Magnus has transposed it into now a stone wall. This is a risky opening strategically by Magnus, but he knows that in order to beat Ding, he must try something unusual. And this bishop f4 is such an interesting move because Ding has taken doubled pawns but at the same time has gotten rid of the dark squared bishop, which is a very important piece for black. Why is it important? Because the remaining pawns are on light squares. So the bishop on c8 is not a great piece, but what Magnus feels is that he can actually develop it via b6, bishop b7. Let's see. For now, white is definitely slightly better. As is the case with all such stonewall games, Magnus hopes to sort of fight back towards equality. c6 played and Ding goes e3, solidifying his structure. b6 as we saw by Magnus. Now the bishop can go to b7, also could come to a6 on this diagonal. Ding taking his time. He has 4 minutes 40 seconds. Magnus has 4 minutes 47. It's a 5 minute plus 3 second increment game. For Ding, there are many options. One is to castle, but if he castles, there could be bishop a6, and so he goes first knight e5, putting pressure on the c6 pawn. Magnus defends it with bishop b7, and now you can go rook c1. There are ideas like queen a4. You can also castle. You can also take on d5, and Ding goes rook c1 here, improving his position. White's play is very simple and natural, but black has to be careful. Magnus develops his knight and tells Ding, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take on e5 and then put my knight on e4. If you take on e4, I'll take back with the f pawn. And yes, my bishop might not be the best one here on b7, but what about your bishop on g2? That's also not so great. It's limited by my pawns. Queen a4 played by Ding, attacking the pawn on c6. Now this queen is a very irritating piece because it's putting pressure on a7, and Magnus says, I'm going to take the knight. I'm just taking it, and the idea which we just discussed right now, which is to take on e5 back and put the knight on e4, is what Magnus wants to do, and he does it. Now for Ding, to take the knight would be a mistake because if you take here, the f file opens up and the f2 square is tremendously weak. So he can't do that. But at the same time, what should he do with his king? Is it safe on g1? Seems like it's safe, but first Ding takes on d5. And he's asking Magnus, with what will you take back? And Magnus takes back with the d pawn. A very good idea could have been to first take on c3, and after the rook takes, to then take back here with cd5. But also interesting is c5 opening up this bishop. And this is something that Magnus could have done, but he took on d5 pretty quickly. Now what Ding should do is he should move his knight away to e2. In that way, the knights are not getting traded and his knight sits on f4, attacking the weakness on e6. It's not an easy move to make because your king is in the center, but Ding Leren plays it. Excellent chess by him. He wants to put his knight on f4, he wants to attack e6, and he's telling Magnus that your knight alone here on e4 cannot do much. Now notice the time on Magnus's clock. It's roughly 4 minutes 20 seconds. He's thinking about many things. Firstly, he could be thinking that let's go to h4 here, attack the pawn on f2. Now the most natural move here is to castle, but then the knight jumps in on d2, attacking the rook. If you were to play rook d1, then my knight jumps back and I'm attacking f2. You can't push the pawn because there's queen f2 check and e2 hangs. And so you may want to go back, because if you take on e4, that is just catastrophe, because after takes here, f2 is under pressure. So these are some problems. You can also think about putting your knight on g3, but then f4 opens up, and this is exactly what Magnus is calculating right now, that how can you do. But then you can think that after knight d2, instead of rook d1, there is rook e1. And then when you go back, there is f3. And even if you check here, king h1, this seems like a nice position for white, because after knight g5, I have this very interesting move, queen a3. The point being, you can't take on f3 because of rook f1, and I will take this back. This is actually complicated, and you can see that Magnus is trying hard to calculate all these intricacies. What about instead of queen h4, if he goes something like a5? Very interesting, because then you can put your bishop down here, and if white castles, then bishop a6 is extremely strong, chopping off this knight. But of course he won't castle, he would go knight f4, attacking e6, and bishop a6, knight e6, queen h4. It gets crazily complicated. But look at the clock. Magnus has thought for nearly 2 minutes. What is he doing? 2 minutes in a game of 5 minutes. He started when he had 4 minutes 20 seconds. Now he's down to 2 minutes 20 seconds, and he plays rook c8. But what a big blunder, and Ding responds instantly. He doesn't even think. This is something very, very unseen, because Magnus thought for 2 minutes really deeply, made a move. Ding responded even without a second of thought, and now once again Magnus is thinking. So something completely wrong with his thought process here. Okay, look, you want to take queen c8, and you are very happy if black goes in here, because then you can play bishop a6, the queen can come into c2 and all of that. But what will happen is that after queen c8, Ding is going to push this knight away. So Magnus has to think whether he should take it with the bishop. But if he takes here, then queen takes a7 is a nice juicy pawn that you want to capture. Now Magnus is down to 1 minute 40 seconds. He's taken really too much time here, and actually he's not just worse on time, his position is also bad, and you can see that he is rotating that pawn in his hand. He's trying to figure out a way to get out of this mess that he has created for himself. 1 minute 20 seconds left only, and Ding, a picture of calmness like always. You know, he is completely focused. He has this little stare at Magnus that, what's wrong with you, my friend? You never really think so much. What is happening to you today? Well, the thing is, Magnus has made a mistake, and now he doesn't know how to get out of it. f3, and Ding is playing so confidently. He knows that he's got Magnus here, and he needs to just keep making good solid moves. Now the knight has to move. Where? It can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, has to go back to g5, but then it's doing nothing much there. And then he first plays bishop c6. Well, does Magnus have something up his sleeve here? Ding's queen is attacked, but you can move the queen away. You can go to b3, you can go to b4. In fact, going to b4 looks very tempting because it allows you to enter on these squares. For now, Ding has a 3 minute on the clock, a 2 minute lead on the clock, total of 3 minutes. He goes queen b4, the best move in the position. He's playing brilliant chess. And knight g5. Now, how do you get your rook into the game? Well, for Ding, it's not even something to think about. He just feels it. His king is well placed on d2. The rook is coming to c1. Queen d7 played, and now it's time to bring your rook on the c file. He brings it there. Brilliant chess by the Chinese player. The knight is coming to f4 next. What does Magnus do here? Okay, he brings his rook to c8. And now, do you put your knight on f4? Of course, this is a juicy square here. And he does it. He plays his knight to f4. An idea here could be queen d6, exchanging queens and weakening e6. So Magnus stops it. And another move played so quickly. You know, moves like bishop f1 don't strike you instantly. But you are improving the position of your worst placed piece. And with such solid, amazing play, Ding has not only got a great position over the board, but look at the clock now. Magnus down to 15 seconds. He goes knight d8. He's being outplayed completely by the Chinese player. Now, bishop a6. That could be a nice idea here to just hassle the rook. He does it. He plays bishop a6. Bishop moves back to b7. You can trade on c8. Maybe you can also trade on b7. How does Ding continue here? The thing is, you have built up a winning position. How do you finish off your opponent is an important skill. Ding goes bishop b5. Look at him exerting himself to find the win. Because finishing off Magnus Carlsen is always tough. It's like you have got a wounded lion in your control, but the wounded lion is the most dangerous. Because finishing off means that he is going to fight for his life. And this is what Magnus is doing right now with 16 seconds left. He is looking at all the possibilities that are up his sleeve. There could be counterplay with g5, kicking off this knight. There could be exchanges that could happen on b5. Ding repeats. Is he going to take a draw? I don't think. Not at all. No chance. Knowing what a fighter Ding is, this is not likely. So first Ding takes on c8. And now you can take with the queen. But then if you take with the queen enters on e7. So he takes with the bishop. And the point here is that now actually you can take on c8. That's what Ding does. Takes, queen takes, and moves in. And it's a mate in one, guys, here. So Magnus has to play h6 here, which is the best move. But you can see Magnus is unhappy. How does Ding finish this off? The e6 pawn is well defended. The knight has to come into the game. Can you go to g6? Well, first a check. King here and knight g6. Notice the knight can come to e7. Can also go to f8. There are too many possibilities here. Would Magnus want... Oh, he goes queen c4. He goes queen c4. Ding says, let me first pick up a pawn. And now he starts calculating. Because you can pick up this knight here. It's a free piece. Let's just look at it here. Knight d8. But then Magnus gives a check. Then he's planning to take on b2. And then he's trying to get a lot of counterplay here. So for Ding, it's a decision here. What should he do? He has 1 minute 15 seconds. He gives a check first here and he finds this entire line, it seems. Knight g6, where is the mate? Queen h8 would have been mate, but the knight is hanging. If you can move your pawn to h5, that would be wonderful. But it takes time and Ding is so confident. He actually plays knight e7 and tells Magnus, you can take the pawns you want, you can give me few checks, but in the end my king is escaping and your king is busted because queen g8 is a checkmate here and there's no way to get around it with 4 seconds left for Magnus. What a firm handshake by Magnus, literally saying, Ding, you played well.